Rain whispered against the tin roof of a small tailor shop on the city's forgotten edge. Inside, the only light came from a single bulb trembling above an old sewing machine. Each click of its needle was a heartbeat. Steady, lonely, alive. Evelyn Carter worked through the night, her fingers raw, her eyes hollow but kind. Then came the knock. When she opened the door, 2 infants lay in a wicker basket, wrapped in torn hospital blankets. Their cries broke the quiet like lightning over silk. A note fluttered between them, damp and trembling. Please save them. Evelyn looked out into the darkness. No footsteps, no car. Only the sound of rain swallowing secrets. She gathered the twins into her arms, her breath trembling. For the first time in years, she felt warmth. Not from fire, but from purpose. But she didn't know then. When their father returned, everything she had built would unravel. The years passed like folded fabric, quietly, layer by layer. Evelyn Carter grew into her 30s beneath the hum of her sewing machine and the soft laughter of the twins she had named Noah and Nora. Her world was small but precise, stitched together by habit, faith, and the faint smell of cotton dust that never left her fingers. She was not beautiful in the way magazines defined it. Her beauty was quieter, like candlelight on worn wood. Strands of chestnut hair escaped her bun when she leaned over a dress, her lips pressed tight in concentration. Her hands, calloused and thin, could mend torn lace so delicately that brides often wept seeing her work. But no one noticed the small silver ring she wore on a chain around her neck. It wasn't gold or precious, just a dull circle of iron, the last thing her mother left her. It reminded her of a promise whispered long ago. Love, even when love doesn't stay. Every morning, Evelyn woke before dawn. She packed simple lunches for the twins, braided Nora's curls, straightened Noah's collar, and kissed their foreheads before school. Her voice was always soft, but sure. Be kind, she'd say, even when the world isn't. When the shop opened, the bell above the door sang its weary note, and the townswomen came in one by one. Some brought wedding gowns, others brought grief, black dresses needing alteration for funerals. Evelyn treated each with the same care, her quiet empathy hidden beneath layers of fabric and thread. The children often played behind the counter, building castles from boxes of buttons. Their laughter filled the place with a warmth she could never buy. In the evenings, when the last client left and the street lights blinked on outside, Evelyn would sit at the window, mending little things. Torn cuffs, loose hems, broken dreams. The twins slept in a small room behind the shop, their breaths rising and falling like the tide. Those moments, between exhaustion and peace, were when Evelyn prayed silently. Not to be rich, not to be known, but to have enough strength to keep them safe. Her neighbors often whispered, "She's too young to have children that age." But Evelyn never corrected them. Let them think what they will. The truth belonged to the night it rained, to a basket, and to a promise she had never broken. She believed love was something you built stitch by stitch, until the day someone came to unthread it all. The rain that had brought the twins into Evelyn's life had also washed away a secret she had buried beneath silence. It began 12 years earlier in the maternity ward of St. Joseph's Hospital, where she worked as a seamstress for the newborn unit. Her job was simple: mending blankets, sewing tiny gowns, repairing what the world tore too easily. But one night, the hallway smelled of antiseptic and sorrow. A nurse had rushed past her, cradling 2 premature infants swaddled in identical white cloth. Their mother, the nurse whispered, had died during delivery. No name, no family. Only a pair of silver bracelets around the baby's wrists, engraved with a single initial: G. Evelyn remembered standing by the window as thunder rolled across the city. The infants were placed in the ward's isolation room, their cries thin and bird-like. When the doctor signed the report, unclaimed, Evelyn's hand trembled. Something about that word hollowed her out. She had once been unclaimed, too. 2 days later, she overheard a conversation outside the head nurse's office. "The father is gone," the nurse said quietly. "A young executive from the Grant family. They're paying to keep it quiet. He's been sent overseas. No one is to contact him." Evelyn froze. The name Grant was well known in the city. Owners of the textile empire Grant and Sons, the same factory that bought her patterns and paid her barely enough to eat. That night, as the storm returned, she walked into the nursery. The lights were low, the world asleep. The twins lay beside each other, fragile and breathing. Evelyn reached out, tracing the tiny silver bracelets with a trembling finger. "You deserve better than silence," she whispered. And in that moment, reckless, impossible, holy, she made a choice. She wrapped the twins in an old hospital blanket, placed a note between them, "Please save them," and carried them out the back door into the storm. She knew how to vanish. Poor women always did. She hid for days in an abandoned tailor shop on the east side, stitching their names into little cloth tags, Noah and Nora. The newspapers later mentioned the missing infants. The hospital conducted an investigation, but the trail led nowhere. The records were sealed, the story buried under money and influence. Evelyn kept the secret close, sealed behind the hum of her sewing machine. Years passed. The twins grew strong, their silver bracelets now tucked in a wooden box beneath her bed. Sometimes, when she couldn't sleep, Evelyn would take them out, polish them with a handkerchief, and whisper a silent prayer that no one would ever come looking. But fate, like a loose thread, always finds a way to unravel. One autumn afternoon, a client brought in a wedding gown torn at the sleeve. The name on the order form caught Evelyn's eye. Grant and Keeper Fabrics. The family name stirred a faint chill in her chest. She finished the order quickly, ignoring the unease. But when the driver came to pick up the gown, his business card slipped from his pocket. It bore a familiar crest, 2 interlocked G's engraved in silver, the same crest she had once seen on the infant's bracelets. Evelyn's hand shook so hard she dropped her scissors. The man looked at her oddly. "Are you all right, ma'am?" She forced a smile. "Yes, just a little tired." That night, she sat alone by the shop window, the city lights trembling on the glass. She took out the bracelets again, her heart heavy. Grant. The name felt like a ghost pressing against the door. In her heart, she knew. One day, that door would open. For now, she still had her little world. 2 children asleep in the back room, a half-finished dress under the needle, and a silence she prayed would never break. But the storm outside whispered otherwise. Because somewhere beyond the city, Alexander Grant, heir to Grant and Sons, had just returned from 12 years abroad, unaware that the children he thought lost were alive, growing, and loved by the woman who had once saved them. The first sign of change arrived not with thunder, but with a car too expensive for her street. A black sedan stopped outside Thread of Hope, its chrome gleaming under the morning sun. The bell above the door rang, and a man stepped in, wearing the kind of confidence only money could buy. Alexander Grant. He looked out of place among the rolls of fabric and jars of buttons. His suit was immaculate, his tie a perfect Windsor knot. But what caught Evelyn first wasn't the wealth, it was his eyes. Sharp, searching, familiar. "I'm looking for a seamstress," he said, his tone polite but detached. "I was told you handle private commissions." Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron. "I do." "What is it you need, Mr. Grant?" he replied. "Alexander Grant." The name hit her like a thread snapping mid-stitch. She felt her breath catch, but forced her voice steady. Of course. What would you like made? He glanced around the shop, his gaze settling on a framed photo of two smiling children standing beside a mannequin. Those are your kids? Evelyn followed his eyes. Yes, my children. He nodded slowly, eyes narrowing, then lifted something from his pocket. A silver bracelet, polished to perfection. My mother found this among old storage from our hospital wing. I'm tracing its origin. Evelyn's world tilted. She recognized it instantly. It was the twin of the ones hidden beneath her floorboard. Her voice nearly failed her. That's a beautiful piece. Rare, he said, watching her carefully. It belonged to my brother's children. They vanished 12 years ago. There was an investigation, but it went cold. We thought they'd died. Silence pressed against the walls. Evelyn turned back to her sewing table, afraid her shaking hands would betray her. I'm sorry for your loss. He studied her, the air between them tightening. May I ask your children's ages? Noah and Nora are 11, she said quickly. Too quickly. His expression changed. Barely, but enough. 11, he repeated softly, as though testing the weight of the coincidence. That's remarkable. When he left, Evelyn sank into her chair, her pulse wild. She didn't notice the curtain move at the back of the shop. Noah peeking through, curious about the stranger in the expensive suit. 2 weeks later, her name was on every local headline. Woman accused of kidnapping billionaire heir's children. Mystery seamstress under investigation. It began with a visit from child services. Then came the police. Then the reporters, faces pressed to the glass, shouting questions she didn't have the heart to answer. They said the DNA tests confirmed it. The twins were the biological children of Alexander Grant. The night they took Noah and Nora for questioning, Evelyn fell to her knees. Please, she begged the officer. They're my children. I raised them. They don't even know him. The officer's eyes softened. Ma'am, it's the law. The court will decide. The world she'd stitched together, every thread of safety, every button of hope, was ripped apart in one motion. By morning, the shop was vandalized. Red paint slashed across the sign. Thief. Her client stopped coming. Orders were canceled. Even her landlord left an envelope under the door. Eviction notice. 30 days. Evelyn walked through the empty shop like a ghost. The sound of silence felt heavier than any scream. She picked up the fallen open sign, her hands trembling. That night, the doorbell rang again. Alexander stood there. No suit this time, just exhaustion. Rain clung to his shoulders like guilt. I didn't know it would go this far, he said quietly. The board, the lawyers, they moved faster than I could stop them. Evelyn met his gaze, her voice raw. You started it. His eyes dropped. They're my blood. And I'm their mother. He looked up, startled by the certainty in her tone. You knew who they were. Yes, she whispered. From the beginning. His jaw tightened. Then you admit. I admit I saved them. The words cracked the air between them. Alexander froze. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice trembling but fierce. You were gone. They were dying. No one came for them. I didn't steal them. I stayed. For a long moment, neither spoke. Rain tapped against the window like a clock counting down. Finally, Alexander said, I'll make sure you're treated fairly. She laughed, a hollow sound. Fairly? By the same system that left 2 newborns to die because their last name was inconvenient? His face hardened. You don't understand the world I come from. She looked at him, really looked at him, and said quietly, No, Mr. Grant. I understand it too well. It's the world that breaks people like me, so men like you can sew their names onto the pieces. The next morning, she walked to the courthouse alone. Cameras flashed. Questions flew. Did you kidnap them? Do you regret what you did? Are you seeking money from the grants? She said nothing. Only one line escaped her lips before the bailiff led her inside. Love isn't theft. It's the only thing I've ever given freely. Inside the courtroom, she saw Noah and Nora sitting beside Alexander. They looked lost, frightened. When their eyes met hers, the world stilled. Nora whispered, "Mom." Evelyn smiled through her tears. "Always, sweetheart. Always." And somewhere in that quiet moment, amid judgment, shame, and flashbulbs, Alexander felt something twist inside him. Guilt, maybe, or recognition. The kind that whispers you've made a terrible mistake. Because humiliation has many forms. For Evelyn, it was public ruin. For Alexander, it was realizing too late what real love looks like. The house was silent when she returned from the courthouse. The air still smelled of rain and strangers' perfume. Reporters had stood on her porch for hours. Their voices still echoed in her ears. Kidnapper? Liar. Thief of heirs. Evelyn locked the door, leaned against it, and slid slowly to the floor. The sewing machine sat in the corner, motionless, the same thread she'd left half spooled that morning, dangling like a question she couldn't answer. She tried to pray, but the words wouldn't come. In the back room, 2 empty beds waited. The sheets were still warm from the last night the twins had slept there. Their laughter, once the rhythm of her evenings, had become memory. She pressed Noah's pillow to her face, breathing in the faint scent of soap and sunshine. For the first time since that storm 12 years ago, Evelyn wept without restraint. The tears came like confession, not for what she'd done, but for what she was about to lose. By dawn, she packed a small case. Inside it, she placed the iron ring from her mother, the 2 silver bracelets, and a folded note addressed to Alexander Grant. Her handwriting trembled across the page. If you truly love them, let them keep what I gave them. Kindness, courage, the belief that love doesn't have to be bought. She set the letter on the kitchen table, then reached for her coat. Her plan was simple and brutal. She would disappear again. Leave the city, start over somewhere no one knew her name. It was the only way to stop the storm from touching the twins again. But when she opened the door, a gust of wind swept in, scattering the papers on the counter. One fell face up, a child's drawing. Nora's careful handwriting curved at the bottom. Mom's sewing us a happy ending. Evelyn froze. The drawing showed her sewing machine, 2 children laughing beside it, and a sun breaking through the window. Something cracked open inside her. She sank into the nearest chair. Clutching the paper to her chest, her body shook, but not from fear, from a sudden, fierce defiance. She realized she couldn't run. Not again. Running was what people like her were expected to do. Vanish quietly so the powerful could tidy their conscience. No, not this time. She looked around the tiny house, the cracked tiles, the uneven floor, the smell of fabric and warmth, and whispered, "This is our home." Her hand steadied. She folded the letter to Alexander, slipped it into her pocket, and lit the sewing machine once more. The bulb flickered, then burned steady. Evelyn leaned forward, voice low but certain. "They took everything else. They won't take my truth." And as the needle began to move, the sound rose again. Soft, rhythmic, alive. The heartbeat of a woman preparing to fight for what love had built. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and fear. Rows of cameras blinked like cold eyes. Evelyn sat at the defendant's table in her plain gray dress, hands folded, her posture straight, but unyielding. Across from her, Alexander Grant sat beside his attorneys, men in tailored suits, whispering strategy like soldiers before a quiet war. The judge entered. Murmurs hushed. Only the clock dared to speak. "Case number 308, the clerk announced. Grant versus Carter." Evelyn didn't look at Alexander. She didn't need to. The weight of his presence was enough, a silence filled with questions he didn't yet have the courage to ask. The prosecutor stood. "Your Honor, this woman unlawfully took 2 infants belonging to the Grant family 12 years ago. We have conclusive DNA evidence linking the children to Mr. Bearstort, Alexander Grant." A flash from the gallery. Reporters scribbled like vultures pecking at a meal. The prosecutor turned, voice sharp as glass. "She deprived a father of his rightful children and built her life on deception." Evelyn's lawyer, a tired public defender with kind eyes, rose slowly. "Objection. The evidence will show Miss Carter's actions were not theft, but mercy." The judge leaned forward. "Proceed." The first witness, a retired nurse from St. Joseph's Hospital. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "That night, the babies were left unattended. Their mother passed, and no family came. We were told to file them as unclaimed." "By whom?" the defense asked. "By the Grant family representative," she whispered. "They said it would protect their reputation." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Alexander's brow furrowed. "Do you see that representative here today?" She nodded. "Yes." Her eyes flicked toward the row behind Alexander. A man in a dark suit shifted uneasily. Robert Vance, the family's old attorney. The defense continued, steady now. "Miss Carter, what did you do after discovering those infants?" Evelyn stood. Her voice was soft, but carried through the room like a thread drawn taut. "I held them. They were cold. Alone. And I knew if I left them there, they would disappear into a system that forgets children like them. I didn't steal them. I saved them." The prosecutor scoffed. "You had no right." "I had no choice," she cut in, and for the first time her voice cracked. "You speak of rights, as if love needs permission." The judge rapped the gavel once. "Order." Alexander looked at her then, not as an accuser, but as a man seeing something he'd been blind to. He remembered his mother's cold warnings, his father's silence. He'd been 21 when the scandal struck. A lover lost, a pair of infants he was told had died. His parents buried the truth under paperwork and shame while sending him abroad to rebuild the family name. He'd believed them. For 12 years, he'd believed. The defense approached the bench. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to submit Exhibit B." He held up a folder of hospital documents, records long sealed. The clerk read the first page aloud. "Authorization to relinquish parental rights. Signed, Alexander Grant, age 21, under medical counsel of Robert Vance." Alexander's head snapped up. "That's impossible," he said aloud. "I never signed." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Are you denying this signature?" He stared at it, then at Vance, whose face had gone pale. "That's not my handwriting." The room buzzed. Cameras clicked. The judge gestured for silence. "Mr. Vance, care to explain?" Vance stammered. "It was a family directive. We did what was best for the company." "Best for the company?" Evelyn whispered. "Not the children?" He didn't answer. Alexander stood, suddenly stripping away the composure of privilege. "Your Honor, I withdraw my case." Gasps filled the air. The prosecutor turned sharply. "Sir, you can't." "I can," he said, "because this woman gave them something I never did. Love." The judge's voice softened. "Are you certain, Mr. Grant?" Alexander nodded. "Completely." He turned to Evelyn. "You shouldn't have had to raise them alone. But I see now, you weren't my enemy. You were my second chance." Her eyes glistened, but she said nothing. Words would only cheapen the truth. The judge declared the case dismissed. Evelyn's knees nearly buckled with relief. The courtroom dissolved into chaos, reporters shouting, flashes bursting. But she only saw two faces running toward her, Noah and Nora. They collided into her arms with cries of joy. "Mom!" She clutched them tightly, inhaling the scent of their hair, whispering, "It's over, my loves. It's over." Across the room, Alexander stood alone, hands trembling at his sides. He looked at the family that wasn't his by law, but was, somehow, by grace. He approached quietly. Evelyn looked up. Their eyes met. "I don't deserve forgiveness," he said. "Then don't ask for it," she answered softly. "Earn it." A silence passed between them. Raw, human, sacred. And for the first time, Alexander Grant understood what his wealth could never buy. Redemption stitched by calloused hands. 2 years later, the bell-above thread of hope rang again. But this time, it didn't echo in a hollow room. The shop had grown. Sunlight spilled through wide windows, glinting off rows of sewing machines, where women worked side by side. Some were young mothers, others widows, all learning to stitch their way back into life. Evelyn stood near the back, her hair streaked with silver, her posture calm and proud. A plaque above the door read, "The Thread of Hope Foundation, funded by the Grant Family Trust." The name had once been a shadow. Now it was a promise. Alexander had kept his word. He'd stepped down as CEO and transformed the company into a cooperative. Half its profits redirected into training centers for women in need. He no longer wore his success like armor. He visited the shop every month, not as a savior, but as a volunteer. Sometimes he brought fabric, sometimes lunch, and sometimes quietly, just to listen to the hum of machines and remember the woman who had shown him what love sounded like. That afternoon, Evelyn guided a new student through her first stitch. "Don't rush," she said softly. "The thread listens to your patience." The woman smiled, her trembling hands steadying under Evelyn's touch. From the open door, a familiar laugh rang out. Noah and Nora burst in. Teenagers now, their school uniforms slightly wrinkled, their smiles bright as spring. They ran to her, holding out a stack of flyers. "Mom, we finished the design for the charity event." Evelyn laughed. "Let me see." She unfolded the paper. In bold letters, it read, "Stitching the Future, a night for mothers who mend." Below the title was a sketch. 3 hands joined together, one rough, one small, one strong. Her breath caught. "Who drew this?" Alexander's voice answered from behind them. "We all did." She turned. He stood at the threshold, no longer the man who once wore guilt like a suit. Time had softened him, stripped him of arrogance, left behind something truer. He carried a box wrapped in brown paper. "I brought you something," he said. Inside was her old iron ring, now restored, polished, and welded to 2 thin silver bands. One engraved Noah, the other Nora. Evelyn's eyes filled. "You found it?" "I didn't," he said. "Nora did, under the floorboards. Said it felt wrong to hide something that kept our family together." She traced the names with her thumb. "It's beautiful." Alexander smiled faintly. So is the woman who wore it. The air between them trembled with memories, rain, fear, love, forgiveness. He didn't reach for her hand. He didn't have to. Some things, once mended, don't need to be said again. Outside, the sun sank low, washing the street in gold. The women in the shop began packing up, laughter blending with the whir of the last machine. Evelyn looked around, her heart swelling with the quiet knowledge that this humble sound, was victory. No court, no newspaper, no billionaire's name could take that from her. She walked to the window, the evening breeze brushing her cheek. The world had called her a thief once. Now, She taught others how to take back what had been stolen from them. Dignity, purpose, peace. Nora slipped her arm around her waist. "Mom, do you ever miss the old days?" Evelyn smiled. "Sometimes. But then I remember. Those days were the thread. These are the patterns." From the doorway, Alexander watched them bathed in sunset light, 3 silhouettes stitched together by mercy. Evelyn turned once more to her machine. She pressed her foot on the pedal, and the familiar hum filled the air, steady, rhythmic, eternal. Some stories aren't written on paper. They're sewn into lives, one stitch at a time. The camera would fade here, the golden thread gliding through fabric, the sound of love reborn.